or even the infamous Illuminati, we find that they all revolve around the Freemasons. They were created by or from within the Masons, and often their supposedly separate discoveries have merged back into the fold. And so, we have a modern, worldwide secretive brotherhood, outwardly claiming fraternity and equality, being the culmination of millennia of mystery traditions and vague to say the least about its own origins. Most of those who have made serious studies of the rituals and symbols, beliefs and traditions within the Masonic Lodge have come to the same conclusion, that it is a continuation of the underground stream that has gone through the various periods of world history, as we have just seen. It all began in the knowledge of the heavens and the mind of man. It all revolved around strength, and so our question has to be today: what is the true purpose of the modern elite within the Brotherhood? Is it truly one of charitable works? Yes. Does it still maintain ideas about reaching the divine in balance and wisdom? Yes. Is it an organisation seeking influence and power? Yes. Has it been involved with revolution and scandal? Yes. But wait a moment. Surely, if Freemasonry were truly a continuation of the ancient secretive occult groups, then somewhere hidden within its folds would be the Illuminati, or the illumination of the self. This mysterious energy which is supposedly reignited by adepts. Well, we need to delve a little to discover whether this is true. In 1722, a remarkable book called Long Livers by Robert Sambers was released. The book was a treatise on universal elixirs and was dedicated to the Lodge. In the book, the author indicates that illumination was in fact part of the process within Freemasonry for attaining eternal life. These concepts, we are told, were only to be found at the higher grades and used the language of the rose and the cross, the language of the Rosicrucians. These claimed that their 14th century mythical founder, Christian Rosenkreutz, travelled to Damascus, the home of the Gnostics, and Arabia, the home of the Persian Magi, or star worshippers. They claimed to be the Invisibles, and to simply be a continuation of ancient mystery sects from Egypt, Eleusis, Samothrace, Persia, Chaldea, and India, all homes to the mystical process of enlightenment. To the realist, or the man who maintains a classical Newtonian world of physical truths, these concepts of achieving enlightenment through drug or physically induced methods can seem quite mad. As one Freemason writer once said, one could easily conclude the existence in Freemasonry of two currents which appear contradictory and which are merely complementary: the rationalists and the Lumens. What unites and binds them together is the ritual. The rationalist politicians have inspirers. These are the occultists of the lodges. And so we are told that Freemasonry is quite aware of these two worlds, the logical, political and protective world of the ordinary Mason, and the inner sanctum and spiritual world of the mystic. Freemasonry has such power and strength today that it can easily support millions of individuals if it so wished. It can also spread the word and propaganda around the world faster than almost anybody else. There is little point in racing after the Rosicrucians, the Theosophists, or the Golden Dawn, because they are but streams branching off from the mighty river of the Freemasons. One proof of this statement can easily be found when we take a look at Theosophists. In an article entitled The Anatomy of Revolution by Dargon, we find the following statement. The Theosophical Society was founded by Madame Blavatsky, who was employed as an agent of the Carbonari, which she joined in 1856. The Carbonari are a branch of the Freemasons, and Blavatsky herself was an Oriental Freemason, and working for so-called hidden masters who directed her will. As our Masonic author again states, Freemasonry is the place from whence the diverse sects draw their elements. It is from them a preparatory school, a filter, a discipline. In essence, man can have it any way he wishes and still be connected to the main hub of the Masonic Lodge. And what is the purpose of this group, according to one writer, who was close to the fold? Theosophy, occultism, Freemasonry, secret sects or mystico-civilizers have but one common aim: to assure the liberation of man, to withdraw from him all traditional moral sense in order to be able to enslave him for the good of the interests aimed at. This mysticism is indeed the great Masonic secret, the supreme initiation. It is as old as this world. In 1822, the Prime Minister of Austria addressed the Russian Emperor Alexander with the following stark warning. These societies are a malady which eats into the social body in its noblest parts. The evil has already thrust out deep and extended roots. Europe runs a risk of succumbing to attacks upon it ceaselessly, repeated by these associations, absolute monarchies, constitutional monarchies, republics, all are threatened by these levellers. Following these warnings, the revolution in Russia became a reality. It was fostered by the Freemasons from the several lodges still remaining. Even texts written by Karl Marx himself have been shown to be blatant copies of the writings of Adam Weishaupt of the Illuminati from the 18th century. In Hungary, the same procedure occurred, and in 1922 The Secrets of a Provincial Lodge was published, exposing the underground work of the Freemasons, leading to the revolution in October of 1918. The book claimed that above all the Freemasons worked through the press. With patient and persistent labour, they succeeded in gaining over most of the press organs. They also aimed at the professionals, schoolmasters and professors, hoping to take control of the minds of the youth. They succeeded. In Spain, a long effort by the Freemasons also brought revolution. Deschamps wrote in 1881 that the revolutions which since 1812 have succeeded each other in Spain have been caused for the most part by the rivalries of the different Masonic factions, which always unite in order to fight Christian social order. It began in 1728, when a delegation from the English Grand Master opened a lodge in Spain. By the time Charles III came to power, his own courtiers were full of Masons, and pretty soon the influence over the government itself was like a stranglehold. By 1766, they had managed to drive their hated enemies, the Jesuits, out of the country. By 1812, the Catholic and royal power base of Spain had become servile to the people, with real power being held by the Cortes of Cadiz, a Freemason constitutional government. By 1830, Freemasons held almost all positions of power, including over 5,000 officers in the military, and by 1868 they had created revolution against Queen Isabella, who was deposed and fled to France. In 1931, the Grand Chancellor of the Spanish Lodge said, at a Grand Lodge meeting, "I bring you cordial and fraternal greetings of the Supreme Council of Spain. We have now the Republic. We have 6 Mason ministers, about 20 Mason high officials, and more than 120 Mason deputies in the Constitutional Chamber." They were indeed very proud of their endeavours, and as if to hammer home their future works, the Chancellor then states, "Spanish Masonry associates itself with the task which the League of Nations has taken up. It is the Masons who must create this universal conscience." Later, the League of Nations would become the United Nations, and would itself be full of Freemasons in positions of the highest authority. In the history of Masonry in Portugal from 1931, we find the following statement: "I have noticed that almost all noted men in religious, political and intellectual revolutions of our country during the last 2 centuries were affiliated with Freemasonry. At the end of these researches, I was convinced that the history of Masonry in Portugal was absolutely linked with the history of the country." These tales of Masonic power struggles in Europe can go on and on, from Italy to France, Great Britain to Russia. For instance, in 1903, a Freemason had created the International Court of Justice. By 1917, Freemasons such as Libet and Mioni were setting up the League of Nations. Similar plans were afoot in India, as one of the leading lights in the Theosophists and co-Masonry, Annie Besant, stated in 1929 in her own newspaper, New India, "Try to perceive the great plan as a whole. India is the keynote. India is the centre of that great storm which shall usher in a splendid peace. No true Theosophist, and certainly no one who is working for the inner government of the world, will be careless of India's welfare. Co-Masonry has been given to India that it may be a powerful, organised force for India's service." To aid in the rise of India and the expulsion of the British Empire, a secret, hereditary group of assassins known as the Thuggees were employed. These men were devoted to the goddess Kali, although the actual origin of the Thuggees is much debated. According to the historian Sleeman, it all began in the 14th century, the same period the Freemasons trace their origins to, and the same period the Knights Templar were banned. The origin, however, goes that a Thuggee saint appeared in India possessing vast sums of money. He had come from Persia, where he had been a disciple of the Old Man of the Mountain, the leader of the Ishmaelites or Assassins, who themselves were friendly with the Knights Templar. Assisting the Thuggis were the peaceful fakirs, otherwise known as Sufis. The dual brotherhood, it seems, also had a hold in India and would eventually, and with the aid of European secret societies, push the British Empire out. The clever thing about the Thuggis was that for centuries they had been like secret service sleepers, existing as part of society with ordinary lives and jobs, until called upon to rise, then seeping back into society and passing on their secret trade to their children. It seems there is little difference today with the many terrorist groups across the world. And what was the Theosophists' and Co-Masonry's true purpose in aiding this Indian uprising? As Annie Besant herself stated, it is in shaping their aspirations toward nationhood as an integral part of the coming world empire. In short, this secret occult society would shape the opinions of the ordinary people of India in order for this socialist revolution of a new world order to come to fruition. She enlisted the aid of the Labour Party in Britain, as well as leading thinkers such as George Bernard Shaw, Ramsay MacDonald and Gandhi. And all of this, it is claimed by the Theosophists themselves, as directed by some inner government of the world. But is there a main centre to this web? Do instructions emanate outwardly to all the strands? The facts are that Grand Lodges have spread into other nations and planted their systems of growth and control so successfully that the history of the world cannot be written now without their involvement. However, even the Masons admit that over time the forms of Masonry became divided. French Mason Albert Lantoin said, "The ancient chain must be soldered again, which in making the order more powerful would allow it to influence, in a humanitarian sense, the politics of rulers." His words were taken seriously, and in Geneva 1921, the first meeting of the International Masonic Association was held. In 1922, the orator of the Grand Lodge of France at the IMA meeting stated, "My brother Masons, my hope is that Freemasonry, which has done so much for the emancipation of men, and to which history owes the national revolutions of 1789 and 1871, will also know how to make the greatest revolution, which will be the international revolution." By 1930, this powerful organisation included the Grand Lodges of Vienna, Belgium, Spain, France, Greece, Poland, America, and many more. At that time, it seemed to spearhead an aggressive attempt to plant lodges in Latin America and undermine the Catholic power base there. What was the reason? It was the very same reason reported by the Grand Orient of France to the International Association of Masons, namely, that it desires good relations and links of personal friendship between regular Masons in order to form a chain encircling the globe. Even Islam was not free of Masonic intrigue. In Turkey, revolution was sparked by the Freemasons, who had become acquainted with the Turk militarist revolutionaries, and by 1908 they had deposed the government. One 19th century opponent of the Freemasons said, "Freemasons have contended for the empire